and welcome to Juicy Crimes Palm Springs edition. I'm here with my sister, criminal defense attorney at law, Shannon Yellowflower McDonald Goldstein. Welcome back to Juicy Crimes.
Hi, Heather. I'm so happy to be back in Palm Springs.
We are technically in La Quinta, but that is in the Palm Springs area. And we are doing a whole fun Juicy Crimes theme by recording it here because we are going to cover a crime, a very juicy crime that happened in Palm Springs. And you actually personally know the female prosecutor who did the case. And this is a very juicy case that involves gay lovers, gay porn, grifters, con men, princes, whiz kids,
and millionaire.
Millionaire, old, iconic women who loved their gay BFFs when they would visit Palm Springs. Gossipy. It has it all. And then, of course, you, in fact, knowing some of the players from the actual court that happened here in Palm Springs. So why don't you introduce us to this crime and all the basic details? And we will say, if it sounds slightly familiar, we also wanted to share it with you because it was on Dateline with our buddy Josh Mankiewicz.
Yes.
Which made it really fun. But if you have not seen it, you will enjoy this episode as much as if you did see it, because then you're going to get our opinions on it as well.
Rula supports every aspect of your mental health journey, from therapy to medication management. With its diverse network of licensed, experienced professionals, Rula's therapists and psychiatrists make it easy for you to get the care you need. Thousands of people are already using Rula to get affordable, high-quality therapy that's actually covered by insurance. Visit Rula.com/juicycrime to get started. After you sign up, you'll be asked how you heard about them. Please support Juicy Crime and let them know Heather McDonald sent you. That's RULA.com/juicycrime. You deserve mental health care that works with you, not against your budget. I've been using OneSkin for quite a while now, and I absolutely love it. I love their tinted moisturizer that also has sunscreen in it. This is so easy when you're going out for a walk and you know you need that coverage. This season, don't just moisturize. Support your skin at the cellular level with OneSkin. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code JUICYCRIME at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code JUICYCRIME. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support Juicy Crime and tell them we sent you. Try OneSkin today.
But let's walk through it.
Yes. And I'll try to simplify it. It's not that simple.
It is very confusing. So we do need to clarify many things.
But I have to say, this is a crime that actually happened quite a long time ago, December of 2008. But it was, pretty interesting to you watch the Dateline, because I saw a lot of people I did recognize and know. So I've been, as Heather has told you guys, I've been in the desert for a long time practicing law. And over the years, obviously players change, but there were definitely some familiar faces. So this is unfortunately the murder of Clifford Lampert, who at the time was 74 years old, and he was a gay art collector to the stars. They kind of described him. He lived in, it is the Las Palmas area. It's called an old Las Palmas area in Palm Springs. Beautiful homes, wonderful homes, and he just kind of lived this lavish lifestyle where he just kind of knew old Hollywood and knew all the people. Everybody wanted to hang out with him. He was a lot of fun.
Just to give some history of Palm Springs for anybody that doesn't really know of how it's grown throughout the decades, it was this retreat and haven only 2 hours from LA for Hollywood types from Bob Hope to Lucille Ball. They all started to get homes there and have fun, because it is really a great retreat. It is different weather than LA, and it's only a 2-hour drive. And that's when these homes were all built in the mid-century, in the 50s. And many of them have maintained their architecture, and it's a really cool part of the history of Palm Springs. And then, because it then became this place that gay Hollywood could go and be themselves and be safe and have friends. And of course, so many women back in the day in Hollywood had many secretive gay friends that couldn't maybe be out, and those relationships began. And this guy, Clifford, wait, that's not his name. Cliff was really kind of part of that world. There's photos of him playing backgammon with Lucille Ball and all these people, kind of like a Liberace type.
Right.
And with all the fun that time and that era happened. And he made his money because he was into the art world. He wanted to be an actor in New York. He then got into the art world, and he had the genius idea of taking very, very famous pieces of art that's in museums and printing them, in that you would buy a print of it and you could frame it and people would know it was not an original. And that is really where he made all his money. But then he also had a lot of original expensive art himself, in which he would art deal back and forth with these celebrities.
Yes. So, and he was in a relationship for 15 years prior to a younger man, and around 2007, very young. Actually, I believe when they met, his boyfriend, Travis Hobbs, was 19. Was said 15, was 19, he was not 15, and which would make Cliff about 57.
Pretty shocking.
Yeah, I know.
But even the sister was like, you know what? He loved his lifestyle with this older rich guy, and it was fine. And then he died.
Yes, I think.
How did he die?
I felt like it was a drowning in a jacuzzi, or
seemed a little suspect.
It seemed a little suspect, but it could have been one of those situations where maybe he had a heart attack in a jacuzzi. I don't know if we need to,
I don't know. They obviously didn't want to feature that part,
right?
For
and he
reason.
Would have only been about 35, so obviously very young, tragic. So he's single again, and he wants to go on the dating scene. And at this point in time, he meets kind of a character. I call him in the porn world. His name was Eddie Mulligan. He kind of had, I would call, that 70s feathered hairstyle look.
Well, what's kind of interesting is this guy started out as a model and then just went full blown hardcore gay porn.
Yeah.
Back when you had to do like a million VHS videos and go to things, and he was like on the cover of like, Little Boy Blue magazine or whatever it was called. And he found himself, I think, like a lot, it's not a lasting job,
right.
Like it's not like they get residuals off the VHS tapes. So he was just doing his go-go dancing thing.
At Hunter's.
And
if you know Palm Springs, you know Hunter's.
Yes. And he's a great character to be part of a Dateline. And he said that he was just shoving underwear. He goes, he didn't even look me in the eye. Well, yeah, because you're wearing a G-string and your dick is in his face.
He'd rather look at that.
He just kept putting dollars in my G-string. And he said, we're going to be fast friends. And I just knew we were. And he said they were never sexual, but he was like, come with me to New York. And he would, treat him to all these fun things and expensive life. And they're both wearing fur coats. And he's like, we were just really, really great friends. So then Cliff is like, I want a date. I don't know how to begin. He's like, well, you have to go online. Now, this is 2007-8, right?
Yeah, 2007 is when his long-term relationship ended, unfortunately. And so 2008, and I think he looks to this friend of his, Eddie's, and he says, I don't really know what to do. I do want to meet somebody. He goes, well, you're going to have to do the apps, because the guy was older now.
Yeah.
And so he does the apps, and he finds this guy named Danny Garcia, who is, certainly presents himself as somebody who has lots of money, is young, likes to party, is well-to-do, and he flies him out to Palm Springs, and they start to enjoy each other's company. Okay.
And Danny's pretty cute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
then.
Has some natural freckles.
Yeah, and he's young, which seems to be.
She did not get rid of him. Did you hear that Kim Zolciak apparently lasered off her daughter's freckles when she was 12 without her knowing? She just thought she was going to get like a facial. And then all of a sudden she's like, where did my freckles go? And then her mom was like, oh, we got rid of those things. Anyway, this kid had a lot of freckles, but like a decently cute young guy.
Definitely.
Okay, so then what happens?
So they start to date, and he's Danny. His name is Danny, and Danny is friends with this guy named Kashal Neroli. It's kind of, Kashal Neroli. And he basically touts himself as this sort of exiled prince from Nepal. And he's got lots of money and they kind of hang together, and it's just everybody's all living the high life and nobody thinks anything's suspect. And they're kind of hanging around together, and I guess they start to all date and hang out together, and they like Cliff because he's got a lot of art and they have a lot of fun. And then so basically what happens is everything seems to be fine. I think the friend Eddie Mulligan, goes, we're all going to go to the Christmas parade, which is this big event that they have.
The gay porn guys,
yes.
Eddie Mulligan.
Yeah, Eddie Mulligan. And so he expects to see his friend Cliff to come and meet them at the Christmas parade.
Which, by the way, when they showed that Christmas parade, I'm like, that's something I never need to go to.
Well, I have been to it a couple of times.
It looks pretty dork. Is it dorky? I
Well,
mean, it was just like all these high school kids in a band.
Yeah, but you know who did it? You know who was the master of ceremonies was...
Ross Matthews?
No, Lisa Vanderpump.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, back in the day. And I want to say that was when my kids were pretty young. So I would say maybe around a few years after
it can
this
be
time.
fun.
Oh, yeah, but I would say it's more of a family event.
Okay, got it.
So they're going to go to this Christmas parade. And at this point in time, Danny and Cliff are dating, and the prince is just a friend of Danny's. It's not like a three-way or anything. I didn't mean to insinuate that. But this Cliff doesn't show up. So Cliff doesn't show up, and a couple of days later, he still can't seem to reach him. This is the best friend, Eddie. And he goes to the house, and he sees that nobody's there, but it looks like there's been a glass with that and of alcohol that's still kind of in there, and then there was like cigarettes. I think that was almost like the day after that same night. And he goes, oh, he probably had company, everything's fine. When he still doesn't hear from him, he goes back to the house and he realizes that everything's been cleaned up. So he thinks, okay, he's fine, but he hasn't heard from him. Then at this particular point in time, he starts to get an email saying, I'm in Hawaii and I'm having a great time, but that doesn't really sound like him. So now things are getting suspect, because why would he go to Hawaii? He should be calling us. We don't know where he is.
And also, it's just so weird if you're in a calling, texting. Well, back then there was not as much texting, but if you're in a calling relationship, suddenly you're choosing to write an email, like when you know. And he's like, he never really wrote me emails before. Like, that's weird. Okay.
Right. It was really, really weird. So at that particular point in time, he does file a missing persons report, and he goes, something's not right here. I really need you to look at that. And that's when he goes to Palm Springs Police Department, and they start to look into it. And I think right around this time, there is an agent, a real estate agent in San Francisco, who's working with this prince. And apparently she thinks she's got this great deal because he's inherited this property, which happens to be Cliff's property, and just thinks that it's kind of suspect. So she does a little bit of digging and realizes, lo and behold, that this house that supposedly the prince had either inherited or it had worked out through some investment, belongs still to this guy, Cliff Lambert, who apparently is missing.
And can we just say, as a former realtor, like, what a bummer. Because it started out where she called the police said, yeah, we got this call from a realtor. And she's like, I have a client who, has this house, this mid-century, modern classic house with a pool in like the best neighborhood, who wants to sell it fast. So it's like a realtor that's like a dream listing, right? Like the first offer that rolls in, you're going to be done in like a weekend. And then she goes to find out, oh shit, I've been scammed. This is an owner that is missing, and whatever who this guy is, which I always talk about. Like, I don't know why grifters love to get realtors' hopes up, but that is like one of the hardest parts about being a realtor, is someone acting like they can afford the house that you're bothering to show them. But anyway, so that fell through. That girl's moved on. She has a podcast now. No, just kidding. I don't know.
But I mean, kind of thank goodness for the real estate lady too, because they could have maybe taken this property without the alerting. Because at this point in time, right when it's sort of been alerted, so now the police are like, this is interesting, so let me go to this property. And lo and behold, there's this U-Haul. And this guy's like, oh, well, my friend said that they're, going to be selling this property, and I'm to clean out the whole property. And they're like, well, what do you mean? How do you know them? Well, they said I moved some art for them. They'd, give me the Rolls Royce that's in there. Well, that's pretty suspect. Well, okay, well, why don't we talk to you further? And the guy goes, okay, no worries. Doesn't think that he needs an attorney. Goes back lets him walk into the hotel room that he's in there temporarily. And this guy, this bartender, his name is Miguel Bustamante. There's a lot of names, it can get a little confusing. He goes in and
let's just refer to them as the bartender, the prince, and Danny the freckled gay. Okay, I think I'll be that the easiest way.
Okay,
that
might help me.
And the porn star. That's going to be easier.
Oh, okay, yeah, actually, okay, this might actually because
even watching it, I was like, this is so hard when they're just the two of them, like the attorney and like Josh Mankiewicz talking. I'm like, unless there's a photo every time that we're talking, and we will share photos in this, but like, but continue.
So
the bartender takes him back to his Motel 6, and there is like Louis Vuitton luggage, all these things personally of this guy
who's currently missing.
Yeah, who's currently missing. All of his possessions actually weren't in the U-Haul. He was already taking them. He was already screwing over the people, screwing over the missing guy because he was taking extra for himself,
right,
and putting them in the hotel room.
Lots of grifters.
Motel room. It was like
grifters
a Motel
attract
6.
grifters. Yeah. So, and in addition to that is Cliff's ID, and clearly where Cliff is missing. So, first he kind of tells a story going, oh, well, I was just doing a favor. It's all in the up and up. This guy, Cliff, basically said that he sold his place or gave his place through this investment to this guy, Danny, and the prince. But then he realizes, they're not buying it. They're not buying this
The cops are not buying it.
Yeah. So now I'm going to say, well, no, actually, they wanted to steal all of this art, and so they kidnapped the Cliff, and he's in Mexico, so they can get all the art and they can.
That's
steal
what the bartender
art.
says.
Yes, and he's trying to pin it on, of course,
the prince and Danny, the freckled gay. Okay.
Correct.
Finding a therapist is hard enough, but finding one who actually takes your insurance, that's where most online therapy platforms fall short. Many don't work with insurance at all, which means you're stuck paying the full cost out of pocket or paying for an expensive monthly subscription. Rula does things differently. They partner with over 100 insurance plans, making the average copay just $15 per session. That's real therapy from licensed professionals at a price that actually makes sense. Think about it. You use your insurance benefits to maintain your physical health. So why wouldn't you do the same for your mental health? With Rula, you can find the right therapist for you. Rula partners with a network of over 15,000 therapists and psychiatrists nationwide, enabling you to find your personalized solution and the right therapist for you based on your needs, preferences, and state requirements. Thousands of people are already using Rula to get affordable, high-quality therapy that's actually covered by insurance. Visit Rula.com/juicycrime to get started. After you sign up, you'll be asked how you heard about them. Please support Juicy Crime and let them know Heather McDonald sent you. That's RULA.com/juicycrime. You deserve mental health care that works with you, not against your budget. I've been using OneSkin for quite a while now, and I absolutely love it. I love their tinted moisturizer that also has sunscreen in it. This is so easy when you're going out for a walk and you know you need that coverage. I love their body lotion because as we get older, our skin feels like it's getting a little crepey, and it has really helped bring back that bounce to my skin all over my body. Changing seasons can mean harsher air, drier skin, and summer sun really did damage some of our skin. So maybe you've noticed more fine lines and wrinkles lately, like I have. Your skin has different needs this time of year, and that's where OneSkin comes in. My favorite thing about OneSkin is, unlike most products, the OS1 peptide works beyond the surface, down to the cellular level, treating the visible signs of skin aging right at the source. This season, don't just moisturize. Support your skin at the cellular level with OneSkin. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code JuicyCrime at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code JuicyCrime. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support Juicy Crime and tell them we sent you. Try OneSkin today.
So now, we still have a missing person, and now we're trying to look farther into these two characters, right? So then upon looking further into it, they find out that the prince, who maybe isn't on the up and up, is already dealing with a fraudulent case where he's spending some time in jail and has some court hearings, and he's up in San Francisco. And apparently
Do you remember what the fraudulent case was that caused him to be?
No. I mean, I remember it was some sort of thing where he had basically grifted and stole some other kind of art or some sort of, it might have been insurance fraud. I'm not positive now.
Okay.
So he's already but he's doing his time and he's got this attorney. So now this attorney ends up ultimately being, somewhat a part of this too. And this attorney's name, we're just going to call him attorney, but his name is David Rapogli. So now they're checking out these guys. And in the meantime, we now have a prosecutor that's investigating this case because this is all very suspect, right? So now we definitely have Miguel Bustamante, the bartender. And so the prosecutor, it was kind of fun for me to actually watch this because I was not expecting to see somebody that I know. And I'm like, oh, there's Lisa DiMaria, and she's a prosecutor. She's somebody that I've known for a long time and I've worked with. And so she is basically kind of talking about some of the things that she has to do. So one of the things...
but she also attended your baby shower.
She did. It was a long time ago because that little baby now is 21 years old. And, but yeah, she attended my baby shower.
You were like young, cute female attorneys out in the desert.
Yeah.
Living your life.
Yeah. And then, and she's very good attorney, very good prosecutor. So she is, and still pretty young at this time.
She looks great in the Dateline. She's very attractive.
She is. She is very attractive. And this was like, so this is all happening around 2008, beginning of 2009, as she's kind of going through what she needs to do. So one of the things that she decides to do with her team is once they got a name of these guys, they go, well, let's look back and see the phone calls that this guy might have made when he was in jail dealing with, and we're talking the Prince here, when he was dealing with this San Francisco case. Well, I think anybody that wants to commit a crime and might go to jail, you should know this. Nothing you do and say in jail and prison is really private, even though it's supposed to be or should be. You don't want to be having these conversations. So apparently he's having a conversation with Danny. And at this particular point in time...
Danny the freckled gay.
Yeah. And this is all apparently happening. They know each other. And this is happening before this alleged murder that happened in December. And he's saying things like, I have a prospect.
Hold on. So the prosecutor went back in time
to look at those
listen to those conversations because every conversation is taped.
Yes.
And realized there was a conversation between the fake Prince and the freckled gay Danny that was about what was going on with a plan to get a lot of money from Cliff.
Right.
Okay.
And it's kind of almost like kind of the immaturity of it was the language was like Operation CL, which means Cliff Lampert, which basically means I've met this guy and they've now done their digging and they think he's worth like $68 million and now I'm dating him and this is going to be once you get out of your jail or whatever, here's our next grifter plan. Because it's pretty clear that this is what these guys did. They didn't want to work and they wanted to make a lot of money. Yes.
There's going to be a lot that gets revealed in this hour if you are not familiar with the case. But now that we know how it ends, which you'll soon hear, I think that Cliff told him he was worth $68 million because he was trying to woo him.
Right.
He was trying to hook in another guy for 15 years like he did the other.
Right.
Doesn't like to be alone, obviously.
Right.
And so I think he was promising this young guy the world, just thinking he was a young, dumb guy looking for a sugar daddy instead of a experienced conniving con man who also had a gay partner in crime who's pretending to be a fake prince.
Right. And later on, when let's get farther into the Dateline, Lisa does indicate that
the prosecutor
thinks that he was very boastful, whether he had this money or not. He was very boastful, Cliff, of who he was, and that certainly would attract a certain type of person that maybe is looking for, a sugar daddy, for lack of a better term. But I think if Cliff had kind of said that, I think he really wanted to present as a sugar daddy, not as anything else. But if the person on the other side is a grifter and obviously a criminal, then it could really go sideways.
Right. Okay. So then she looks into it all and starts to connect the dots a little bit.
So it's, and obviously we have there's a whole team, right? We have we're always going to have like a DA investigator, and I think there's now a fraud detective that comes in. His name is Simon Min. He's working with the police department of Palm Springs. So everybody's investigating and looking into this. And as the more they get into it, there's more people that kind of come to the surface. So now they think...
Also, a really fun part of the Dateline episode is like this older lady, like Mitzi or something.
No. Oh, wait.
What
I
was her
have...
name? And
wait.
she's... and like
Brisbane. What's her name?
I don't know, but she's like this older lady who's like...
Oh, Barbara Brisby. She's
Barbara
a gossip
Brisby, who's like a gossip, but like literally, they're like, she wrote gossip for Bottom Line magazine, which is like about bottoms. Like it's like a complete hardcore gay magazine. And she's like,
yeah, I wasn't familiar.
The queen of the town and like writing the gossip for that. And she's like, now she's like mid to late 70s, gray hair with like brightly colored framed glasses.
Yes.
And just to add to the fun of like them putting this Dateline together, they have Josh Bakowitz and her in the back of like a 1969 Cadillac, driving through Palm Springs.
Yes.
And I mean, I really have to say, like, they really had some fun with doing the Palm Springs element of like this production value.
Oh yeah, I mean the weather's perfect, the palm trees are out,
and then when like Josh is walking with a porn star,
that's the best.
He's like, so, he's like
that name,
yeah, and his porn name is like Kevin Kramer, and he goes, I want to thank you for choosing a porn name that Dateline can actually say. And, you know, I was like, okay, great. Like, oh, you've had quite the illustrious career. And it's like, ugh. Yeah. Like, you're just like, there's like photos of him, like, in, you know,
like these magazines.
Bottoms up.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like these magazines you would not want to be looking at. But, yeah. So.
Okay. So, anyway, where are we now? Where are we in this story? Okay, so she's starting to investigate, but they don't, you know, he's still missing. They don't have a body. One thing I kind of wonder, and you know, obviously they can't cover everything, and I guess we could have find out. It's like, who did inherit the home? I wonder. Once they finally, because it took a really long time for them actually to find his body, but I guess they had to declare him dead before the trial started. But I just wonder, like.
If in fact Cliff had maybe people that like family. That
yeah, like I wonder. Like,
I don't know if
like whoever got the house and like
maybe it was Eddie
and who's like living in it now, and they're just like,
maybe,
oh God,
maybe
here's Josh again knocking on the door.
Maybe
like,
maybe it's the porn star. I mean, he certainly earned it. I mean, because as we see at the end, I think that guy really was somebody, because this case goes on for a long time.
Okay, so let's keep going back. So now, let's just kind of lead the audience to like what is interesting and get to it.
Well, I think what's kind of interesting, some of the things we were talking about was a little bit that comes out about Danny, kind of like, well, who is Danny and how did he become this great grifter? And I think the one story that you and I both found pretty interesting is that he basically, you know, what grifters do, he sued somebody. He sued somebody for, it was this guy named Mr. White, for basically saying, I'm a victim of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse. And then Danny has this attorney that ends up becoming a defendant, and they basically go to Mexico, or I think it was, or maybe some area of South America.
No, they went to Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, Puerto Vallarta, yeah.
Which is also a really gay town in Mexico.
Okay.
It has a lot of gay life.
But they go out and they basically seek out like 22 of these younger boys, and they basically say, if you just say that this guy sexually abused you too, we'll give you a payout.
I'm guessing the guy must have spent a lot of time in Puerto Vallarta, like maybe he had a second home or something that would do that.
Right.
And so in that, they were able to get him arrested.
Right.
And while he's sitting in jail, did they, I
Filed
guess
a lawsuit.
Right. They did get the lawsuit, and Danny did get a chunk of change.
Like $500,000.
And then so he got to be like the toast of the town.
Right.
In San Francisco and whatnot, which is where I think he met the fake prince.
Right. So he's already getting that money. And at the same time,
but in that case, they later find out that all those boys lied, where they recanted, or were paid to say what they were going to say, and the old man that never probably molested anybody was still in jail when he died.
Yeah, which I think he died in 2013. Always claimed his innocence. You know, it's really sad. I mean, because basically they're just doing this constantly to see what can happen. So what was interesting is part of the stuff that also came in, more witnesses to some of this grifting that this Danny had done, was this other guy, I believe his name was Tyson, who kind of was this gay guy in San Francisco and loved to hang out with Danny and the Prince because they always were at the bars and they would always buy everybody drinks and there were lots of fun. And during that time, there was a time where they went to they basically ended up stealing some credit cards that he had at his place.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Danny stole, the guy Tyson, who was friends with the Danny the freckled gay and also knew of the Prince, he went and just took off for like a month to like have a vacation and appeared to have like a pretty normal job and stuff. And then he like checked his accounts one day. He was doing 1 month in like Brazil.
Right.
And all of his accounts were like emptied and his credit card was being used. So he kind of freaks out, hops on a plane, comes home and sees that Danny has been using his credit cards, actually saw his face at the ATM, plugging in his numbers, taking his money. So he had to deal with that whole situation, knowing that this guy was not a true friend to him or boyfriend or wherever they were.
Right.
And he came into play because when this case started to get reported about, somebody in the comments of an online article said, well, the last time I saw Cliff, like just someone in comments who like lives in Palm Springs said, the last time I saw Cliff, he was with a pretty good looking, young Indian looking guy. And that is when the Tyson guy goes, oh,
I know.
Oh shit, that's the guy, the fake Prince.
Right.
I know it. That's the fake Prince. And Danny's involved with this guy. The two of them must be hanging out. And that's why then he called the detectives and was like, I have something. And I just think that's so interesting because there's so many times in when I'm working on Juicy Scoop that I read the comments and I do find out information just by somebody just going, well, so-and-so, like this happened. And so this really like actually whoever made this comment, whatever gay guy this was, who was at Hunter's that night and just happened to see the article and was like, I remember seeing Clifford like on one of the last nights and he was with this guy. Like he like cracked open the case, like just a comment on a So
because that's how they were really able to find these two guys. And obviously they had Miguel and then the bartender, and the bartender could lead them to that too. But it was just interesting because of all of these connections.
And then what also is interesting in now this is coming together is they found that there were these answering machine messages or voicemail messages of this man who sounds like he has an English type accent.
Right.
English /
Indian
accent, calling Cliff and saying, hello, I represent, some rich heiress, Bunny, whatever her name is.
Florin May.
Florin May.
Florin May, I do remember
And she was a New York heiress who he, of course, had photos with and was socializing with. And she had died a while back.
She had died like 1995, and she really did have some serious art pieces. And the idea was he was hoping to inherit one of those art pieces, and he never did. So I think he kind of just didn't think about it, but then suddenly he gets a phone call from this attorney that says, oh, by the way, you really do get to have this art piece.
Yeah, there was
and I'd like to meet with you.
There was a secondary will or something. And she wanted to leave all her art to you. So when can we do this? And so he shares it with his friend, the gay porn star. And the gay porn star says, well, please don't have these people come to your house. Meet them at, a fun restaurant instead in Palm Springs, like a public place.
Which I think they did, which he did. And so I think I want to make one correction because it was unclear. Danny and the Prince were always together. But at this time, Cliff only knew Danny. He didn't know the Prince because the Prince ends up acting as this attorney. So when Cliff meets this attorney, it's not an attorney, it's actually the Prince.
Who is actually not a prince. So we're saying the fake Prince is now pretending to be a fake attorney representing this woman who died like 15 years prior, who actually had left money to Cliff. And Cliff's all excited to money because it's art, and he would know how to turn these pieces of art even into more money. and like, wow, this is amazing. He's all excited. So he does start to trust the fake prince.
Yeah.
And he invites them over.
Like, I think it's like a second night. He invites him over because he says, oh, I just need you, if you don't mind, let's go back to your place because I have some paperwork and then we can go through that paperwork there. And so they have a drink, they have some cigarettes.
And it's like a specific kind of like Henson and
Benson and Hedges.
Yeah,
cigarettes.
Benson and Hedges. I don't smoke, so I don't know. But so they have those cigarettes, and or they do, and that was the last, and then that was the remnants of that encounter is what the gay porn star saw when he hadn't heard from his friends for a few days, and then when he came back, it was all cleaned up. We don't know who cleaned that up. We don't know if Danny cleaned it up. We don't know if he had a regular maid service that once they, obviously we know now, like they took Clifford. Maybe she came every Thursday and she just came and cleaned up and ran the dishwasher and whatever. We don't know who cleaned up the house.
But why that Benson and Hedges is important is because later on, the technology comes in and there are a lot of downloaded texts, and we'll get more into that. But in the text between the prince and Danny, they talk about clean up the Benson and Hedges. So that's why there's a connection incriminating that particular prince on that issue. Okay, but there also is more defendants. So the idea is they were going to get rid of Cliff. So once they got Cliff in his home, they apparently had brought two other guys in, the bartender and the bartender's roommate, which we find out later, I think his last name is McCarthy. He was like an ex-Marine. So he ends up, the prince, without Cliff realizing this, goes to a door, lets the guys come in. And
the bartender and the Marine.
Right. And then they just kind of surprise Cliff, right? And so the prince is kind of like out of it, and Cliff's like, what's happening? What's happening? And unfortunately, it results in the death of Mr. Lambert.
According to the Marine, who was the dumb roommate who got roped into this thing, which I'm like, it's pretty disturbing to think that like you went through military training and you'd be so quick to throw your life away because someone's like, hey, if you just help me kill this person, like you'll get a big payout.
Right.
Like it's really...
Well, the bartender thought he was going to get the Rolls Royce. I mean, it really is. You really think, hey, it's almost like we do this all the time. And, you kind of wonder, I don't know, this is my take, from what I saw, I don't know if the Marine, the ex-Marine, I think he might have just thought that it was going to be more of a kidnapping or more like we're going to take this guy away. I don't know if he thought it was going to be a murder because in the end, he sort of holds him with the knife, but I don't know if he actually thought that the bartender who then ends up basically, the Marine is the one that actually gave the statement to the police department and brought him. I don't know if the Marine knew that it was going to be a murder.
Okay. Do you recall, or do you have your notes, was the Marine then got immunity for spilling the beans on the whole story of how it happened and taking the detectives and also appearing on Dateline to show how the crime happened? Does that mean you get off the hook?
No. He did not get immunity, but he did get a plea deal. He did not go to trial. His plea deal, I believe, was voluntary manslaughter, and it was 25 years as opposed to 25 years to life. So with 25...
So the Marine still had to do 25 years?
Yeah. I was always kind of wondering because I kind of felt like they really didn't know who the Marine was, and they kind of knew that he was then a roommate. And then at least the way the show presents it, he just kind of spills the beans. Like, I don't think, in addition to not being very smart by getting himself involved in this, I don't think he was very smart the way he handled the aftermath as far as a plea bargain, getting a lawyer, et cetera. So I don't think we're talking about the brightest brand.
So was it the dumb bartender who then draws that map? So there's a
Let's talk about that story.
A guy, the jail cell situation where a prisoner who's sharing a cell with the dumb bartender says, he told me how everything went down, and they took him in the desert and they threw him in a shallow grave there. And they show the map, which is very remedial and not very detailed. And that's the only evidence they have because they never find the body, but they feel it's enough, the prosecution, enough to go forward with putting all four of them on trial, which is the attorney who helped in the original fake story about Danny being molested by the guy and all the young Puerto Rican kids or Puerto Vallarta kids. They think they get him on murder, along with Danny the freckled gay, along with the fake prince / fake attorney of the old woman who was going to leave all the art to Cliff, the victim,
Right.
and along with the bartender who essentially was the one that, took the knives and stabbed him enough in the back that he died. And they put him in the back of the trunk and then threw him in the desert.
Right. And what's kind of interesting is that they got a lot of the ability from an informant, which most prosecutions do rely on an informant. But I guess this bartender was this good-looking kid from San Francisco, and he's not really sure who to trust. So he gets this roommate, and the roommate becomes the informant and basically says, look, I'll protect the Marine. No, this is the informant in jail. And the informant basically tells...
not the roommate. Then you mean the cellmate.
The bartender. But
hold on. The bartender's cellmate.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's what... And bartender's
But
cellmate
it's also the bartender's roommate, who was the Marine, who joined them on the final night.
Correct. But a big part of that map was when the bartender was in jail and his cellmate, i.e. the informant...
Got it.
The jail informant basically convinced him and said, tell me where the body is. I'll have my guys move the body. Okay, well, here's the body. And then they give that remedial kind of map to the detectives. And then I thought that was kind of almost comical, because you look at the map and it looks like something like that Tyler Henry would do when it just looks like it's chicken scratch, right?
Yeah.
And then that just shows the two detectives in a car driving up like the 5, and they're just going to start digging. I didn't really understand that. I guess there was some truck that they said at the end of the truck is where the body is. Didn't seem like there was a whole lot of direction. I wasn't surprised that they didn't find something, at least at that time.
Right.
But at this particular point in time, they've arrested everybody, and then clearly they do have the Marine that gives the entire statement against the bartender. He also gives a statement against the prince. And so the only person that's really not present, and it's determined that he's not present, is Danny, right? So Danny's not there, but then they find out, and this is where the technology is kind of interesting. I guess in 2008, everybody had BlackBerries. Nobody really texted that much. And it was and then there was an Apple III. Well, Danny, they call him the whiz kid because he's just sort of this technological genius. And then when they end up looking at his place and getting a warrant, they also say he has, numerous phones and computers and all kinds of stuff that even back then would have been a lot, right?
Which is how he was able to hack into the Tyson guys' accounts, bank accounts and whatnot, when that guy was in Brazil and found out he was using his ATM. He also, at one point, I remember the gay porn star said that Cliff complained that he caught Danny in his study going through his stuff.
Right.
They were whatever, seeing each other.
So it seems like Cliff must have known something was going on, but maybe he got drawn into the little, to the fact that he might be making some money. You kind of wonder what was really
that Cliff
happening.
Would be making money from
the art, because maybe he bought into that. Maybe he bought into
the art that was being
from the lady.
Yes, so he was looking forward to
There's a lot
that.
of people.
Yes. This is why it's a lot. I was kind of God, I wonder how well received this episode was, because I enjoyed it, but I was like,
it was like a test.
Yeah, it was so many players, and then I'm like, okay, now I understand. So we go to trial.
Yes.
We go to trial. Your friend is the prosecutor.
Yes.
And the fake prince and Danny the freckled gay decide to represent themselves.
After going through 9 court-appointed attorneys. Now, I always love it because they come off as they're being so rich and everything. Well, apparently they're not, because they qualified for a court-appointed attorney. So after they go through the public defender's office and all the attorneys on the court-appointed list, they decide to represent themselves because, of course, they're smarter than everybody else, right? And so it goes. They're both pretty articulate. They can both argue the facts.
I want to say, I know that's always the dumbest thing in the world. Mm-hmm. And I've said this before with Lori Vallow, the world's worst mother, decided to represent herself after she already got committed to life for the death of her 2 kids, regarding like her ex-husband and I think the brother, and then there was another case with like her nephew. I don't know. There were so many other murders, and she was representing herself, and I was like, well, I mean, like a classic narcissist that she was, you got nothing to lose.
Right.
You've got nothing to lose. A criminal defense attorney that's a public defender, whatever, is not going to work the hardest for you. And it's kind of fun. You get to play lawyer, and why not? Like, I mean, I could kind of see why they did. And with the 2 of them, they're like, we're so good at like scamming and suing. In fact, so while she is doing the case, your friend, the prosecutor, she actually gets served a bogus lawsuit from the Prince and Danny the Freckled Gay saying that we are going to sue you for malicious prosecution of us.
Prosecutorial misconduct. Yeah, pretty crazy that, in fact, she indicates that she actually, had to, testify as to this while this case was going on. So
I have to say in the traits, if someone's going to do like the 10, how they say there's 11 traits of a narcissist or whatever,
right.
If you were to come up with like the 10 traits of a grifter, I would say, besides like being charming, love bombing, whether it's friends or romantic or gay or straight, I would say the second is being really smart around suing.
Right.
Remember with Dirty John,
right.
He was like excellent at like just fucking your life up, just knew how to waste your time in court, knew just enough to be dangerous. Same thing with squatters.
Right.
When they get into your house and they don't leave, it's like they know just enough law to be fucking dangerous.
Right. Well, that's also the trait of a narcissist. I mean, essentially
Yeah.
a grifter is a narcissist.
Right.
And they also have this very much this fuck it attitude. They don't really care. It really is kind of I think even Danny's cousin at one point in time identifies himself as a sociopath, but that's what it is. They don't care.
We didn't even get into freckled Danny's cousin because I felt like there was no point to that.
I kind of agree.
I was like, there was like he was his driver one night, but he like,
and then
I just think they were like threw him into
moment.
be.
Yeah.
It just was another confusing player.
Yeah.
So she is trying to prosecute these 4 guys, and she does get a conviction with the attorney and the dumb bartender.
Well, yeah, and I think they went first, and then she was. I mean, we're kind of like stepping through it, but yeah, she's able to get. I think there was 2 trials. It was first the attorney and the bartender, and that was pretty quick. And then it was because they were also represented by counsel. And so there was maybe a little bit more streamlined. For Danny and the Prince, who represented themselves, one of the other reasons why this case seemed to go on and on and on, even at the first trial, was they had a lot of pretrial motions. They would file pretrial motions all the time. And part of when you are representing yourself, you are entitled to certain assistance. So you don't have a court-appointed attorney, but you might have a court-appointed investigator. And in this particular case, they had a laptop in order to receive the discovery, go through the discovery, organize the discovery.
He was gifted like a very nice Apple Mac laptop.
Right, which obviously
Danny was.
Yes, obviously Lisa wasn't very happy about that, but that's what the court gave him, which is kind of ironic because part of his grifting talents is computers and technology, etc. So at the end, after 3 long years, she gets her conviction, and that conviction comes September 2012. And now it's not.
And you saw her right that night.
Right. Well, it was so interesting. When I was going through this case, I kind of was like, gosh, I remember this dinner, my girlfriend, it was a birthday dinner, and there was like 8 or 9 of us, and we were all together, and Lisa was at that dinner. And
the prosecutor.
And I remember it because I remember she came in and she goes, I just got my, a guilty verdict. Everyone was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And, you can only imagine just the release.
Also the relief, because also she said during this time, she was getting a very scary death threats. I don't know if that was online. I don't know if that was coming from Danny, but under an anonymous disguise or something. But to the point where she did leave the Palm Springs area and like stayed at a hotel in San Diego just to feel
Safe.
during this time.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the relief. She meets you at Costello's.
Right.
Which is a
Castelli's.
Castelli's is like a classic
Italian.
kind of old-fashioned mobster situation.
It is.
For
It's a
like
very good
girls'
restaurant.
dinner. And she comes, and as you can imagine, you know, there was what a whirlwind it has been. I mean, I always think of like when you're really doing these huge cases, it must be so exhausting. And you even said, you know, she wasn't totally herself.
No, I remember she was just, I mean, it was a big night. It was like, I mean, I was like, wow, you know, I can't even imagine. I finally have reached the end of this case. And just so you know, I mean, cases, obviously, when a conviction comes down, we then have the sentencing phase. And the sentence, particularly on a case like this, a sentencing phase can be very long and drawn out anyway. So on this particular night that I saw my friend, but it was interesting because I was like, oh my gosh, was that the night? Because obviously Lisa, this was not her first murder case that she had tried, and it was not the first, you know, guilty verdict she got. So when I was looking back over it, and I realized, I think that was the actual the dates matched up. So I thought, that's crazy. You know, what a small world we live in. So now this is where it gets even extra juicy. So normally at this particular point in time, long drawn out, already very, very interesting case, you would now say, we're going to get sentenced. Yes, they're going to appeal, but it's done. It's done. It's over. Well, you know, the grifter is always a grifter. So he manages to figure out a way with his laptop during the trial to start recording not just the trial, but the elements that are not on record. Obviously, that is illegal. You cannot do that. I think he was caught doing it, and then he keeps doing it. And then in the appellate process, after a conviction comes down, because that starts happening, they basically find in their illegal recordings that the judge at the time said some inappropriate things, some things that were deemed bias, off the record to his clerk, and they're not great. They're derogatory. They're
well. I'll just say what it is because it's on the Dayline.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, he's was licking these envelopes for us to look at, some sealed envelopes about Danny," and the judge says, "Doesn't he have AIDS? Isn't he HIV positive? That is disgusting. That's gross." So that was pretty bad, and that was enough at that time to really fuck it up for everybody, because it looks very homophobic and biased, and maybe these four gay men didn't get a fair trial. Maybe, you know, I can imagine what someone who was defending them could say, like, you know, you're an old fart white straight judge in a town that's very gay. You probably don't like the fact that, you know.
And this was 2012. I can't imagine how much worse it would have been now, but it was bad enough where I don't think the DA's office really pushed back that much. They recognized that how this would look. Yeah. And I think there might have been other comments that would really have really connected not just the inappropriate comments, but to something that could have been bias. Those comments could have meant that I was making calls and rulings on motions that maybe were based on my bias and not based on what was the law. But it is really frustrating because as a prosecutor would look at it and go, yeah, but that has nothing to do with this case. We had enough evidence and the jury came to a correct verdict. But
yeah, like put the judge on probation, but not throw away the whole thing.
Right.
But they did. So then they had to have a complete retrial.
Right. Now, the good news is, as I understand it, is it's a murder case. So they were not released on bail. They were still in custody. But, you know, in the meantime, all kinds of things can happen with the retrial. And the grifters are grifters, and I don't know the details of it, but they came up with all other kinds of things. I think that whole thing that happened with that particular judge, I don't think that actually, that appeal actually even came into being until maybe 2016. So more and more time goes by. So now we retry again. There is a new prosecutor. His name is Rob Hightower. And as the years have passed, lo and behold, they did end up finding I believe it was a skull or a jaw.
They did. So they get the new attorney gets a call. Somebody found this head, and they were able to match it, and it was in fact his. So now they say now there is no doubt that this person is dead.
Right.
And
but they don't know how he died. The only way there wasn't enough forensic evidence to show how they died, but they did still have the testimony of the two other guys that said it was a stabbing.
The Marine. So they go through the whole thing, and he did get the old fake, not fake, the old attorney that was there from doing the fraudulent stuff from the beginning with Danny, and the dumb bartender.
Right.
They do both get convicted again.
Yeah. And just a note, people might wonder, well, how was this attorney? I understand how the attorney was a bad guy in the case with the Puerto Vallarta boys and the sexual case, but how is he a part of this case? Well, apparently, when they were doing all of the fake documents to basically give the house to the prince and Danny, his fingerprint was on the forged documents. So that's what tied that attorney to this murder case.
I wonder if they didn't really get into that, but I wonder if he had a good defense, why they wouldn't try to say, yes, he's guilty of
the fraud,
pulling a scam of a 78-year-old man, but he had no idea that it was going to lead to murder. He thought, we'll be able to scam it because he'll be in love with this guy, and you know.
Yeah, I agree.
But it must have been, well, why? What were you planning on doing when suddenly this guy was outside of his home? Like,
no, I agree.
Obviously, but
I feel like the attorney might have been had a better chance despite that fingerprint.
Yeah, right.
But, I mean, you also as an attorney, you would think that he knew exactly who he was dealing with because he had dealt with this guy before.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there. But yeah, ultimately at the end, yes, we do finally get a conviction. But it was interesting because I think the actual sentencing, which is still on appeal, but I don't think these both of the, well, actually, I take it back. I need to go back 1 second. Danny is also convicted, but in the retrial, which then happened in 2022, right before that happened, the prince apparently is then murdered by his cellmate, is beaten up to death, which, the timing is kind of interesting.
And
it's
the
right
cellmate
before
said
he goes to trial.
And the cellmate said I had to kill him because he wouldn't shut up.
Okay.
He just was talking so much he couldn't take it.
So apparently I did another, I guess in part of the appeals that are ongoing with the prince's family, I guess there is now ongoing a lawsuit, of course, against the Riverside County Sheriff's Department because kind of like the Epstein thing.
They allowed this.
Yeah, they allowed it. And apparently they did it because they didn't like him because I guess at that point in time, by the time 2022 happened, the prince had now identified as a transgender woman.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, I just kind of found this at the very last minute, not in the Dateline. Now, I don't know.
So now is a transgender woman maybe hoping to get transferred to a female jail?
Maybe, and I don't know, maybe.
And so
maybe
now,
and
so now that's probably adding to the case of like this was a crime against a trans LGBTQI person, which makes it worse.
I would be curious to look at that lawsuit that's still apparently maybe ongoing against the Sheriff's Department. So there's just lawsuit after lawsuit. Then the other thing that I found out that I didn't tell you about the last minute was after Danny ultimately does get convicted, but then he starts filing all of these lawsuits and motions to put off his sentencing, one of which he said there was a violation of the American Disabilities Act because he wasn't getting the proper care in custody because apparently he has this rare skin disease where he can't get much sun, i.e. the freckles.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I mean, so when you look at it, when I really look back at like Lisa, or Miss DiMaria, the prosecutor, yeah, I can only imagine the length and frustration of this case and just that they're still doing it to this day. I mean, they're going to be in prison for the rest of their life, but they're still playing these games. Like, it's like they don't know any other way to do it. It's pretty, it's obviously pretty brazen, but.
Well, here's the juiciest of the juice at the very end.
Okay.
So the pieces of art that were taken off of the walls of Clifford's house, in which Danny or whatever stole with his cousin and tried to sell before he even went missing, or maybe he was missing at that point. And they discovered all the art in that house. We don't know who got the house in the end. All of his art that he would tell Lucille Ball and everybody else that were originals and were so much money and could woo young men in a lifestyle of infinite wealth were all fakes. They were all prints, like his business.
So he
none
did
of
not
them
have,
were real.
right? So
and I am saying, wow, he was a grifter too,
right?
And Cliff, and I think that he probably throughout his life sold fake art to rich people and rich women that loved having a gay BFF that were widows or divorcees, and which why he was probably like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to get this windfall of this woman's, actual rich, real art, which I can probably then do prints of that and sell doubles of. Who knows what he was thinking? And I think he was telling Danny that, and I think he was a grifter. I mean, you're best friends with like a. Not that you can't be best friends with a gay porn star, but I'm just saying, like I just don't.
Well, it was all fake, right?
And he was fake too, and
right.
then and I mean, it just in the end, what's interesting about a story like this is like usually when you hear like a Dateline thing, it was like, oh, she lit up a room and she was a mother of 3 and stuff, and I'm just like, all of them are just kind of like users.
Correct.
They're all users.
They're all not
none
good.
of them are completely truthful. Certainly 78-year-old Cliff is not a murderer. He did not deserve to die.
Right.
If he swindles some people out of money throughout his life, he doesn't deserve what happened to him. Thinking that these people were his friends, whether they were all going to do a crime together or he was completely hoodwinked.
Right.
It's very sad. But he's pursuing boys that are 50 years younger than him.
Right. Well,
I mean,
one thing that I kind of wondered about was if he really truly, all of this was fake and he really was drawing people in, and more than likely Cliff unfortunately probably was making money off fakes, so that would be fraud, right? I would love to hear from some of these women or other people, these art collectors that collected art from Cliff. I mean, do they know that they have a fake piece in their house right now? Like, I just kind of wonder about things like that.
There's probably somebody that's like watching it right now that's like,
oh my God,
I gotta go to my grandmother's house.
Right.
Or they've been telling their boyfriend, if we ever are in trouble, Granny's Picasso is worth $2 million, and then are like, wait a minute.
You can't just get a piece of art appraised just by anybody. I mean, it does require a little bit of work to make sure that
right.
This is. And there's probably just so many people that were probably like, oh, he's so great and he's so generous and everybody knows he's such an art collector. Why would we ever doubt that? He had the likes of Lucille Ball in his
and it wasn't
house.
even like some were fake. It was like every single thing that he ever had. That was art in his house. Not one was an actual authentic original.
Right. But he sure said it was.
Yeah.
So then brings out all the people that the Dannys and the princes of the world that just
right.
Who they're all just kind of phony. And I'm trying to think if there's anything. Am I missing? Are we missing anything?
I think that's it.
It was a long one.
Yeah, but it was great that you actually knew the prosecutor. She was a really great prosecutor. It was fun to hear her story and that you guys were friends, and the frustration of something like that when you finally get to the finish line and then this happens because of a judge saying a completely homophobic, awful thing.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I recognized a lot of faces, and that's what makes it kind of cool. And then, they kept showing Larson Justice Center, which is where I go to work every day. So, I mean, the whole thing was like a little really real, but kind of cool, that you see these faces that you've seen before. Like sometimes I would stop it and I would ask my husband, I'd be like, who's that? Isn't that the investigator you've used before? I mean, it was just kind of funny to okay, I recognize this person. So anyway, very cool. Glad that it could, be shown to everybody to kind of see, a real life story that happened in Palm Springs.
Yeah. Let us know what you guys thought in case you watched it, and hope you enjoyed it. And Shannon, tell everybody if they need any legal advice or help, where they can find you and Michael.
Yes, it's at michaelgoldstein.net, and my name, I'm also on Instagram, and it's just Shannon Goldstein at Instagram. And I'm always around. Thanks.
Thanks,
Heather.
Thank you.